defense mechanism. Anytime you think about your immune system, you may look up, what do I do to boost it? And they give a list of things. Make sure your vitamin C levels, this, that. What are those levels? What are those checks and balances? What do we need to do to infuse that into who we are?
Well, first of all, can I stand? I'm a preacher, reverend, teacher, writer, so I'm not used to sitting here and try to be all cute. So I'm going to stand up if that's okay
Yes,
with
please
everybody,
stand.
and have a conversation quickly with all of you. When we have the conversation concerning the idea of uh, liberation of a cultural immune system, when we have this idea of a cultural immune system, what we have to be able to do is to recognize that your immune system is something that constantly has to be boosted, right? Anybody, any of us sitting here, we've all had children, and we know when you take, or if you haven't, Sister Simone, you will soon enough, right? When you have to take your children to get a vaccination, you go back in a series. If it's the MMR, mumps, measles, rubella, if it's the deep tap, whatever it is, there's a schedule that you go through, and this schedule tells you when to bring the child and which shots they're going to have, in which age group they have to have it, and how many they need to complete that round of shots. Your cultural or my cultural or our cultural immune system is such that it has to be delivered in a timely fashion on a schedule, and it's something that we need every day, every 24 hours, because see, the Acelias, as the great Dr. Guy Janti just told us and reminded us per the book Yurugu by the great Marimba Ani, the Aceli or Yurugu, what they do with their Aceli is they're constantly giving us the virus. They're constantly re-injecting the virus through media, through television, through books, through cinematography. But the way they do it, and this is something Brother Demorai Deniran spoke on, but part of it is that Dr. Guy Janti, Demorai Deniran, Dr. Horace Wright, myself, any of the speakers, we are so used to speaking in an area where we have to be careful sometimes of what we say. We're so used to having to be mindful of how it comes across on social media. We're so used of having to, that now that we're having this conversation, we are having a conversation that is here originally, indigenously, but we're having the conversation down here. And the Aceli has the fake world of here, but they're having it here. Batman is hype. Wonder Woman is hype. Superman is hype. Joel Osteen is hype. T.D. Jakes is hype. We can go through all of them, and there's this hype. And they drown us out because we're trying to give the cultural immune system, but we're trying to say it in a very calm and relaxed and social fashion because we're used to having it amongst people who force us to have it there. I've been definitely guilty of having been in situations where you feel that the necessity for us all, and so each of us, Dr. Horace Wright, we're each talking here, Demoran Deniran, he's not like, when he's on the set doing a movie, he's not going, okay, everyone, action, everyone, places, everyone, get the camera, okay, boom. No, you're going, action, let's go. So we got to talk here because we're in a safe space with melanated minds that want the message, but we are not delivering the vaccine in the proper way because we're trying to keep it sedated. No one in this room came to hear any of us, myself included, because I was over here real cool with my nice little African tie on, trying to blend. But I'm saying to everyone, let's crank it up. I'm telling the moderators, raise your voice, raise your energy. If we raise our energy, I'm not yelling, I'm still talking at the same point of my throat, but if I raise my energy, the message is felt. That's the vaccine. When the doctor gets ready to give you the shot, they got to sedate you. They tell you, okay, hey, little one, how you doing? Oh, look at you, look at you. Ah, the kid cries. So if we do that, the mind starts to feel that it's going to be sedated. All of us now, let's turn up the energy, let's crank it up and deliver the cultural immune system. If it's a system, then like every other system, it has to be delivered on time, in time. Each of us today are a musician. somebody's an alto, somebody is a tenor, somebody is a bass, somebody's a falsetto. And if we each deliver it on time, like a rhythm in time, then the cultural system will accept the vaccination. So that's the little piece I want to add. Now, to your question real quick, right? How do we do that religiously? Religiously, it is done when we understand or understand that whether it's voodoo, voodoo, Kendobe, Santeria, Yoruba, Sangoma, Muslim, Christian, Jew, we're all African. And we have a thing called soul. And that soul is the emotional body that gives us emotions, that gives us empathy, not apathy, which is a lot of people suffering from, and not sympathy, which is, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened to you. But empathy. I am empathetic to the conditions that we're under. I am empathetic to the struggles of Guy Gentil, Dr. Guy Gentil, and what he goes through every day trying to reach our people. But in my empathy, then I must align myself with him and form a silsila or an asili of our own to counter the virus. And I'll yield at that point.
Amun. Well,
yes.
Just got my vaccine.
Amun.
Wrapping it up.
I think we all got a dose of that one. Okay.
Yes, thank you for that. My next question is going to Dr. Horace Wright. With food, we like to connect food to culture. And I can see here in the Kanisa, people are having their, is it jerk chicken and rice and peas in the back? Magnum ice lolly. I see
don't know
you. I
about the
see
Magnum
you.
ice lolly business about culture, but go on.
Yeah, I see you. I see you. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a person. I do like me a Chinese. I like a pizza. I do like some fried chips. But I know that's not our original foods. It's not even food anyway, to be honest. But it's my guilty pleasure. But my question is for you, Dr. Horace Wright. How does food connect to our culture? And if we're eating the wrong foods, does that have an adverse impact on our immune system?
I pause because I like to take the mix sometimes. And I was about to sit there and go, well, actually, well, do exactly what my brother said. I'll do that. Okay. Foods. When we talk about, a while ago, we spoke about music. And, I was explaining about the sound of the music. Remember, music is touching. It's frequency. It's affecting you, right?
So, right, can you stand and talk to us? Because I know you ain't that cool. Come on, my brother.
Leave me alone, man. Leave me
me alone. I'm starting trouble because I'm getting messages like, why y'all so dry? They said we need some water to wash
Leave
down
me
this dryness.
Leave
Wash down this dryness with no water. Can somebody put an ice lock so he can
Leave
get some dryness out of
me. Thank you. I cannot stand. If I stand, I knock over the table. I'm going to do what I'm doing. Allow it. I'm going to get to it. Everything in stages. Okay?
5 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, like I was saying, same way I was talking about music a while ago and was saying about the music in the sense that, okay, the music is how it affects you. It's touching you. It's the same way when we're talking about foods, we got to understand that there's foods that we eat that's really coming from our land. And we got to see these foods and say, well, okay, these are things that's necessary for us. Now, you said you like fish and chips.
I said pizza.
And you like pizza.
Chinese.
And you like Chinese. Right?
Fried chip.
And I get it. And I know a lot of people that amongst us that eat these things. And I see people sitting down there now and they're smiling, some of them, because when I said Chinese, somebody smiled. When I said fish and chips, someone else smiled. But we got to understand that in our lands, there's food that's there for us. What are we saying? If you are an animal raised in a certain environment, that's the food that you're supposed to eat. What's in your environment, right? So, but we're here in the UK and we get caught up in the way everybody else is doing their thing. And we start eating what they're doing. We start listening to what they're listening to. We start behaving like them. So as you're talking to me about the foods, I'm explaining to you now, as you start eating foods that's related to your body or your gene, it attracts the gene pool that's within you. Do you understand? So if now we grew up on curry goat and rice, even though I don't eat goat anymore, but I used to like curry goat and rice. I'm not lying. We used to like curry goat and rice, didn't we?
Love it.
Yes?
Yeah.
I'm talking. I've got people sitting down in it. No, you're talking about dry. Them lots are dry. Dry. They just, all I'm getting from them is teeth. Right?
Belly's full.
Right? And we used to, and we enjoy that. We enjoy the rice and peas. And when you eat rice and peas, you're going to put some coconut cream with it, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Indeed,
of course. Because the rice, you see, now you're saying yes, right? Now we're moving away from their dishes. What's happened though is that we're in here and we don't get a lot of what we see from abroad. We get it here and we're leaving it out. So that's why when we go back home to the Caribbean, when you eat ackee and starfish, it's different than here, right? Yes? When you eat rice and peas, it's different than here. When you eat the yam and banana, it's different than here. Yes? But we have to still be able to attach to these because within our body, there's the genes know it. When I'm from the Caribbean, but I'm from Africa. Now, when I go to Africa, right? Yes? When I go to Africa, what happens? What happens? I eat the fufu. I eat okra soup. Yes, yes. I eat palava sauce. I eat kenke. I eat red. I eat palm oil. I eat all of these things. But yes, right? And we enjoy these things.
Cool.
Yes? And it triggers within you because it's part of your gene. And it now makes you say as a person, wow, that's different. I remember, I'm going to tell, let me just move this chair back a bit. Right.
Okay. All right, Cahoon.
Everything in its right time. Right? Everything in its right. I remember when I first went to Gambia and I had my daughter with me. And I said to her, I want you to eat yassa. And she looked and said, oh, I want pizza. I said, you want what? No, you. It wasn't you. No, not Shemi. Not Shemi. Jasmine, right? And she said, I want pizza. I looked at the mother and said, you know what? Give her a yassa. And she sat there and she ate the yassa. And you know when someone's eating something, but she's upset when we gave it to her. And she's eating it, but she's trying to pretend as if it don't taste nice. You get what I'm saying? And she's trying to make it as if the food did not taste nice. And she got through. And I watch, I'm eating the food, watching her from my side of her face. I'm smiling. And as she start clean the plate now. And wipe the plate. and when I finished, I said, did you enjoy that? She went, yeah, that was nice. I said, try, you got to touch your own food. Afterwards, the next day, she wanted something else. The food, when you start to make a connection to your food, you make a connection to your culture, right? You make a connection to your culture. That's one of the things. And because we were taught in here as Caribbeans, we will grow up as Caribbeans that African food stink. I'm fun joke put aside. That's what we spell African food. Oh, African food stink.
The fish.
Not realizing that, no, that's the food. And when I started to eat African food, it made a difference. You're now making a connection back to Africa. You got to make a connection back to Africa. Right? So the food helps you, just like the music helps you, just like the visual helps you. It's all part of making a connection back to Africa. And now when you're making that connection, it's like it stops, it kicks out the chicken and chips.
Well, yeah.
It removes the pizza.
Well,
right? It takes the Chinese out the window.
That's
God.
right.
These foods are they're not in this league. Have you ever been to a Chinese shop and see how quick they put that food together?
yeah.
Yes.
How can good food be made so quick?
That's right.
No. African food takes
15-minute
time
minute.
because you're gonna put love in it. When
Yes.
you're beating the palava sauce, it takes time. Yes?
Yes.
You don't just deal with it. So the African food that you asked me, when you go to your natural,
1 minute.
it just it makes it a way that you get involved more and you feel that. And
Mhm.
it's just like listening to African music or watching something. It just brings you back home. Your gene relates to going back home.
All right, all right. So for us here in the UK,
Is your mic on?
yes, it is.
Yeah, go on.
Quick one for us here in the UK. The best thing for us is to grow our own food. So
Grow
tell
your
us-
own food, but
Okay.
at least sample African dishes. Better to get back home, but you see, start by sampling the African dishes. Amon?
All right, I'm on.
Thank
Take
you.
it easy.
Thank you.
Ooh.
I would like to move over to Dr. Gijan T, if possible. Can I be heard now? Is this better?
You're a bit low.
Mhm.
Is it still low?
Ah, there you go.
Better.
Close,
Okay, I
yeah.
guess I gotta kiss the mic. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Gijan T, I would like to ask you, I think one of the things that we're skipping over, right? We spoke about culture, immune system, great, all of that. But system, the word system itself, I think we're not understanding the components of the system. It's an intricate system that was made when we speak about the Asili or racism, white supremacy. They have a very intricate constructed system. So can you explain, if we're speaking about our cultural immune system, what are the different components? It may be food, which Kahun Mansu just spoke about, religion, Dr. Rama briefly touched on, but can you give us all of the components that we should be looking at today as it pertains to the system itself to counter the Asili or racism, white supremacy system? I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Let me say first of all that what we think of as culture is infused into everything that we do, into every aspect of our lives. So much so that culture is more so experienced as it is taught or articulated. That's not to say that there's not a place for conveying and teaching culture, definitely so. But culture, in terms of when you take into consideration what goes into the making of a culture, you're talking about ways of being, ways of life, ways of thinking, ways of seeing, ways of interacting. These kinds of things are so fundamental to being human that if we interacted with those things on a conscious level, it would for sure render us very robotic and would cause us to not be able to function properly. And so culture and all of its processes and all of its practices, rituals, very, very quickly is absorbed through all of our senses and fills our subconscious mind so that we can move through life and be an African and be a Jamaican, be a Haitian, be a Ghanaian. And so the challenge is not necessarily, though again, there's a place for it in terms of understanding culture from a systemic perspective, but that is, we have to be careful not to fall into an intellectual conversation about culture, because that's not going to address the mental mapping that exists, because after this event here this evening, wherever you happen to be in the world, after this event, we're going to default back to what we have been conditioned to do.
Say that again, please.
Whether it's to run to McDonald's, whether it's to run to somebody else's restaurant, Chinese, Italian, whatever. And so the way that we counteract that, especially for those of us in the diaspora, is that we have to go back to some very, very fundamental things. However awkward it may feel for us, you have to connect, number one, with the language. Because the reality is, if you're an African person outside of the continent, no matter how quote unquote fluent we may be, we are captives of that language. And language is the carrier of culture. And so you may not know technically any other language, but you are speaking a foreign tongue. And so we need to counter that so that we can begin to work on the reprogramming at a much more deeper cellular atomic level. And so we have to address this systematically, yes, incrementally, in phases, but we can't simplify it as if to say, well, if we have these particular days, if we have this particular thing that we do, whether it's in a mosque, a church, or whatever, that somehow that will counteract. Because as the brother was saying earlier, with respect to the art form of film, and all of its various machinations, whether it's sitcoms, whether it's documentaries, commercials, and so forth and so on. If as long as those things are operating from the perspective of the dominant culture, we are 24/7 in a trance state. Hear me well. We are 24/7 in a hypnotic state. And so we, in essence, are sleepwalking. And we have to be very clear about what it takes to get out of that trance state and to reverse that, to re-engineer that with the sounds, with the vibration, the frequencies, and the taste, and the movement, and the art that is natural to who we are. And so, my sister, to your question, this has got to be a multifaceted way of being. Because if we have to think it, on such a conscious level, that means then we're going to default back. And so we need to be in places and spaces where you can just be a Black woman, where you can be a Black man.
Yes.
Because if we're constantly engaged in this sort of like intellectual fear-based fitting into the larger dominant culture, that is how we become and remain sick. And by sickness, I mean physically speaking, emotionally, spiritually, the whole nine. Because if you're living according to someone else's cultural ways of being, it ain't designed for you.
Mm,
So it's not designed to make you well, it's designed to make them well.
That's
And
right.
And so if you're trying to get with that program, you're automatically
That's right.
going to be sick.
Mhm.
I hope we heard that. I really hope we heard what he just said. That is
That's right. That's the truth.
That's right.
go ahead, Sister Shan, because I could keep
Yes.
going on that note. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is going to be for Brother Cush. Brother Cush,